Since 1960, the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences has presented the Best New Artist Grammy to celebrate up-and-coming performers with a bright future in the music industry. Over the intervening 64 years, many of those winners have indeed become superstars in their own right, and on occasion, the award has gone to never-weres, has-beens, and in one notable instance, a pair of total frauds. Crank up the gramophone as the great pop culture debate seeks to determine the Best New Artist Grammy winner of all time. They tried to make me go to rehab, but they don't have one for Ben and Jerry's addictions. I'm your host, Eric Rezsnyak. Please help me welcome my panelists for this episode. First up, she's settled down, found a girl, and married now. It's Andrea Guerrero.
Don't worry, Eric. You'll find someone like me.
Don't forget about me, I beg. I remember what you said. Shut the fuck up about the primary argument when it comes to Pixar movies. And you were right. Next, please welcome back Gary Jackson. Gary, is it a hot girl summer, or are you just happy to see me?
I've made up my mind. Don't need to think it over. It is indeed a hot girl summer, Eric. It is.
Well, thank God I've been airing out my WAP then. And finally, he had a vision of love, and it came to him from FamilyDick.com. Welcome back, Kevin Dillon.
And it was more than that step coach was given to me.
And confidential to our military veterans, Kevin agrees with Mariah about a hero lying deep inside of you. And up in the producer booth, we have Curtis Creekmore, who desperately wishes he had a fast car to get out of here. If you're curious about how he ended up with this Singer 16, become a Patreon supporter of the podcast or listen to the 3-minute primer available wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, you can head to this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com and find the listener bracket as well as select songs of all the nominated Grammy winners so you can play along with us at home. With that out of the way, let's get ready to officiate 33 weddings on live television as we kick off these debates. First up, it's a unanimous victory for ultimate number one seed 1965's Best New Artist, The Beatles, which made for a sour turn of events for 4-seed Olivia Rodrigo, who won the award in 2022. But Kevin, you wanted to say something about Olivia.
I love her so much. It's such a good Grammy win. It's such a great Best New Artist win. I think she is fun. I think she's interesting. Her second album was such, I think, a great mature follow-up that you'd love to see from a new artist. Like, in fact, it was better, I think, than her album that she was nominated for. And when she won Best New Artist, I think she is someone who we are going to be talking about for a long time. And I love that she potentially was sued by someone who's touring Europe right now. And they don't like one another. Allegedly. This is all alleged. With that said, I just love Olivia Rodrigo, and I'm glad she made this top 16.
She's an incredible artist who's at the beginning of her career. We have no idea where she could go, but based on the first two albums, it's super impressive. She just has the misfortune of being up against the fucking Beatles. And so we will be moving the Beatles into round two. And hold up, it's another unanimous decision, this time for 1971 winners, the Carpenters, a 3-seed, which meant 2-seed Sheryl Crow, who won in 1995, is heading back to the Tuesday Night Music Club. Before we let Sheryl go, I do want to speak briefly about her. First things first, who did Sheryl beat out? The Crash Test Dummies? Sure. Counting Crows? That's debatable. Ace of Base? And Green Day? No, I'm sorry, Green Day should have won that award. Sheryl has had a long music career, including performing as a backup singer for Michael Jackson, penning jingles for Toyota and McDonald's, and getting tracks on film and TV soundtracks like Point Break and Cop Rock. And that was even before she won her Grammy and Tuesday Night Music Club, her debut album, came out, and that was a massive smash. All They Want to Do and Strong Enough were omnipresent, and she went on to a successful follow-up album and continues to release new music and tour. In terms of legacy, in recent years, she has been overshadowed by a few different controversies, including dating not one but two men who've exposed themselves to be pretty shitty human beings. She is universally being voted out over the Carpenters. I find that fascinating. We'll see how they fare in round two. Next, the majority of the panel doesn't find anything unusual about 1985's Best New Artist, Cyndi Lauper, a 1-seed. They want her to continue to round two, but Gary is checking the reflection of 4-seed Christina Aguilera, who won in 2000. Gary, try to release the genie in the bottle to magically swing votes to ex-Tina. Kevin, show your true colors in favor of Cyndi. Gary, please go first.
Why we as a group should be moving Christina forward is Christina was coming off her Mickey Mouse Club run. She was in the shadows of, this little known singer named Britney Spears. Her hit single, Genie in a Bottle, it was on the Billboard Top 100, along with What a Girl Wants, Billboard's Top 200. But it was mainly, she was rivaling Britney Spears at Jive Records, and I think a lot of people didn't expect her to come in so hot with the vocals. I think we kind of pinned Britney as the entertainer, and Christina was the powerhouse vocalist. And so this album is memorable, it's catchy, with hooks and choruses that sticks in the listener's mind. And then I think at the time she appealed to like the younger audience with the energetic beats, the relatable lyrics that was like youthful, desirable, and about relationships. And in her year, she was going against Britney Spears, she was going against Macy Gray, Susan Tedeschi, something like that.
Susan Tedeschi, yep.
And Kid Rock. And so... And so, like, I think we just expected it to go to Britney Spears because, again, super successful, a juggernaut that Christina was going against. And the fact that Christina won, I think in her longevity in her career now, vocally as well still, I love Christina, and I think she definitely should be moving forward.
Thank you very much. Kevin, talk to us about, well, actually, this is a 3-1 decision. Has Gary swayed anyone? Andrea, are you sticking with Cyndi, or are you switching over to Christina?
I am swayable right here.
So, Kevin, go ahead and talk to us about Cyndi.
Cyndi Lauper won 1985's Best New Artist Grammy. She was up against Sheila E., Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Corey Hart, and the Judds. I think they picked the correct person of this lineup. Cyndi Lauper's distinctive style and distinctive voice were essentially what I think sets her out and apart from that group. In an era of the 80s, she is a truly iconic pop artist. And when it comes to my rubric for this, I'm also looking for me at legacy, and who for me has the longest legacy living up to the title of Best New Artist and fully capitalizing that. And for me, of these two, that's Cyndi Lauper. She has sold over 50 million records worldwide. She's won awards at the Grammys, Emmys, and Tonys. She wrote a Tony-winning musical, which is wild and crazy. And then you just have, like, I know that Christina has iconic songs, but no song compares to Girls Just Want to Have Fun when it comes to iconic music. But I just think that when it comes to the ever-presence of the artist over this like longevity, Cyndi Lauper has proven herself more so to me than Christina Aguilera, especially lately.
Well, okay. Andrea, where are you on this one?
Well, first, I just want to point out that Kevin's name in this podcast is a Christina Aguilera reference.
True.
So... little confused there. No. I originally voted for Cyndi, and I was like rereading the bracket, and I started leaning toward Christina, and I hear you on the legacy, but it's a weird comparison, right? Because Cindy's 71 and Christina's like, what, 38, 40 maybe?
40. I would
yeah.
guess.
I mean, so she's still got a ways to go. And I would argue that she probably will have a very similar legacy as Cyndi, with her being on The Voice, her being a pretty huge pop star in general. I think I am going to switch to Christina.
I am going to stick with Cyndi, and I'll actually say a couple things here, and I'm sorry to Curtis, who's already flagging us to move along. Number one, I think it's interesting that both of these artists are up against each other because in some ways, they're kind of identical. Cyndi and Madonna had the exact same type of thing going as Britney and Christina. Cyndi was the artist, Madonna was the performer. They're not the same year that they came out, but they were very much pitted against each other in the 80s. I think that there's a great point to be made both by Kevin and Andrea regarding the legacy thing. I did just recently read that Christina has left her longtime label and is moving to a Latin label with Latin management. And she is focusing strictly on her Latin audience, which I think is genius. Because if there's one thing that I think has held Christina back in her career, it is bad management and bad production. She has an incredible voice. As an instrument, I would say one of the top 5 singers on this list. She's had shitty management and not great songs to show off her voice. In terms of who has done the versus potential versus actual results, I give it to Cyndi because she's almost an EGOT at this point. And I'm giving it to her for that. So we will be moving Cyndi into round 2. Next, it's another 3-1 split as the majority of the panel wants to keep back to black with 2-seed Amy Winehouse, the 2008 winner, while I want to keep driving in my car with 3-seed Tracy Chapman, the 1989 winner. I will give you more than one reason to turn right back around and back Tracy. Andrea, be prepared to give Amy some image rehab. I'm going to go first. Tracy won over Take 6, Who, Tony Childs, Who, Part 2, Rick Astley, okay there, and Vanessa Williams. Of that crew, I think Chapman is a surprisingly cool pick for the Grammys, even if Williams at least has had a longer, albeit more of a hybrid career. Chapman is an unlikely pop star. Her music is at its core folk, with elements of country and R&B. She got her start as a student at Tufts University in Boston, which I know several members of our panel are from or have lived in Boston, and she would busk along the MTA Red Line and in Harvard Square before being discovered. Within a few years, she was performing for Nelson Mandela's 70th birthday tribute, and her debut album would be nominated for 6 Grammys, winning 3, including this one. While Chapman's output has been fairly slight, just 8 albums over 40 years, she has continued to have Grammy success. 4 of those albums have been Grammy nominated in pop, folk, and rock categories, including 1997's Give Me One Reason, which won Best Rock Song. She also made headlines in 2024 when she joined country singer Luke Combs on stage at the Grammys to perform her original hit Fast Car, which Combs had covered to great success the year before. All that being said, have I swayed you, Kevin? Are you sticking with Amy Winehouse?
Yes, I think I am on this one. And this, although I will say I am swayable and it's tough because my rubric is longevity. And for obviously one of these people, we can't talk about longevity. And I know that sounds callous in the way I'm framing this, but there's several films about Amy Winehouse. She is an icon. I'm going to stick with Amy.
Gary Jackson, are you sticking with Amy?
I am going to stick with Amy, but I think you did that was compelling story, especially just the genres that Tracy has crossed over and the discoverability of her. And shout out to her being in Boston, but I'm going to stick with Amy.
All right, no problem. And Andrea, you sticking with Amy?
I am indeed sticking with Miss Winehouse.
All right, so we will be moving Amy into round 2. Next, the panel is evenly split between 1991's Best New Artist, Mariah Carey, a 1-seed, and 2021's winner, Megan Thee Stallion, a 4-seed. Andrea, give me everything you've got for your WAP. That, of course, stands for well-argued position in favor of Meg. Kevin, tell us why Mariah will always be your baby. Andrea, please go first. Ow.
So Megan Thee Stallion broke out onto the scene as a badass bitch, and we love that. I think we've talked about this before on this podcast, how we haven't seen a lot of female rappers that have really broken the mold in the same way, probably since like Missy Elliott. And I really think Megan has breathed a lot of life into this genre. And just looking at who else she was pitted up against. So this was an 8 nominee category in 2021.
Wow.
I don't recognize half of these names, but there were 8 of them. I think most notably, though, was Doja Cat. I really think that that's the only other one that would have been a contender other than maybe Phoebe Bridgers. But yeah, Doja is a huge pop star in her own right. And for Megan to be able to beat out someone like her, I think is just a testament to how strong her game is. She had 3 other nominations that night, so 4 in total, and won 3 of them. So she won Best New Artist, Best Rap Song, and Best Rap Performance as well. I just really love her too. I think she's really lovely and fun. She's a fellow Aquarius, which I love. She is my role model, and I want to be like her when I grow up one day.
My God, me too. Thank you very much. Kevin, talk to us about Mariah fucking Carey.
Yeah, this is, if I'm being honest, this is a little bit of an insane thing that we have a 2-2 split on this, but whatever. Mariah Carey, the Queen of Christmas, is one of the best-selling music artists of literally all time. She has sold 220 million records worldwide and is an inductee into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, the National Recording Registry, the Library of Congress, and the Long Island Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame.
Most importantly, absolutely.
Yes, I love that. In 2019, Billboard named her the top charting female solo artist based on album and song chart success. Mariah Carey's biggest competition that year was Wilson Phillips. That was her biggest competition. Outside of that, I'm not even going to mention the other artists' names because I've never heard of them.
Drag them.
And I
Ruin their
am.
lives.
But Mariah Carey, to me, is the person who essentially was one of those archetypes for what we can talk about in this is a largely female list of musicians, but she is essentially the archetype for the pop female Best New Artist win. She's got the voice, the presence, and was crafted by Tommy Mottola to be that kind of more industry vibe person. When she split up her marriage from Tommy, she then completely re-energized and basically created the R&B rap collab with Heartbreaker and other songs. Like, Mariah Carey is a genre-bending genius who I think is the best new artist.
Great arguments. Thank you very much. Gary, are you sticking with Megan or are you on Mariah?
I am sticking with Megan just because Andrew made a good point. I think when Megan came on the scene, she shifted what we knew as rap with her. She brought back the Southern style of rapping. Her literally unapologetic approach to just femininity and her swag, along with being in school and along with her lyricism. Like, I think she really has pushed rap even further into where we are now in rap. So I'm sticking with Megan. Because she got the WAP, you know.
Listen, I love Megan, and I think it's ridiculous she's a 4 seed. I would put her over probably half the other people on this list. That being said, she's up against Mariah Carey. Some of the panelists were not around when Mariah came out, but when Mariah came out in music, it was a supernova. I have never seen anything like Mariah's. I mean, we say meteoric rise to fame, but Mariah was like not there, and then suddenly everywhere, instantly, everyone knew Mariah. She was inescapable, and she still is. So I am giving it to Mariah. She's a 1 seed. Megan's a 4. Megan should not be up against Mariah in round 1. That's a bullshit bracket, and that happened because not enough people voted. So make sure you're going to the poll section of our website right now to vote. But I love you, Megan Thee Stallion. You are a fucking icon, and we're going to do something for you in an upcoming episode. Next, another even split, this time between 1972's Best New Artist Carly Simon, a 3 seed, and 2006's winner John Legend, a 2 seed. Gary, tell us why all of you continues to love all of John Legend. I'll explain why, when it comes to 70s and 80s folk pop, nobody does it better than Carly Simon. I'll go first. Simon won the award over jazz rock band Chase, never heard of them, prog rock band Emerson, Lake and Palmer, sure, Hamilton, Joe Francis, and Reynolds, that's all one band name. Did these people not have any other better names? And Bill Withers, who actually is a legitimate musician in actually competition. But of that lineup, I think Simon's the pretty clear winner. Simon became a household name in the 70s with a slew of mega hits, including Anticipation, You're So Vain, You Belong to Me, and the gloriously 70s Bond theme, Nobody Does It Better. In the 80s, her soft, ethereal vocals made way for brassier power ballads, including Let the River Run from Working Girl, which also won her an Oscar for Best Original Song. Carly is 70s folk pop to me. I don't think she has the pop culture cred as much as some of the other stars on this list, but her catalog is deep, and she worked consistently in music, film, and television for decades after this Grammy win cemented her in the music industry firmament. With that being said, Gary, talk to us about John Legend.
John Legend, why he should win this is that he was already in a powerhouse in the making. He was working with Lauryn Hill, shout out to Lauryn Hill, Jay-Z, and Alicia Keys. And why he deserves to win even more than that is just his vocal abilities, let alone put aside his ability to write, showcasing his being a pianist. What I love about John is that what he brought to R&B was his soulfulness, his soulful voice, his ability to blend elements of R&B, soul, and hip hop resonated strongly with me. And I think when he came on the scene, with a lot of listeners. The songs on Get Lifted, which was the album that brought him to fame, featured thoughtful and introspective lyrics that explored themes of love, relationship, and personal growth. And then his ability to just craft meaningful narratives through his music, I think it appealed to a lot of people at that time. And Ordinary People is my go-to karaoke song. And it was the first song that I sang to my husband when I met him at a bar. So,
oh, that's very sweet.
So I have a soft spot for John Legend.
Excellent. Andrea, is it John Legend or is it Carly Simon for you?
You almost had me with your Carly Simon argument, but I am going to stick with John Legend. I just think he did a lot to bring back that soulful R&B genre in a time where we were kind of like just getting out of like the girly pop artist phase. We were starting to get more like pop rock bands like Fountains of Wayne, Fall Out Boy. So John Legend beat out Fall Out Boy that year, Sugarland, Kane, and Bill Murray's girlfriend, Sierra, which are pretty big beats in my opinion. So I am going to stick with John.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kevin, is it Carly or is it John Legend?
Let the river run. Working Girls, in my letterbox 4. So when you see those things, and I love Carly Simon, so I'm giving my vote to Carly.
Well, we are split, and the higher seed here is John Legend. He's a 2 seed, so that means he will advance into round 2. And as Carly herself would say, "Son of a gun." Next, another unanimous decision as 1 seed Adele, the 2009 Best New Artist, will be rolling in the deep into round 2. And that means that this girl's chances are on fire. That girl being 2002 winner Alicia Keys, a 4 seed. But Andrea, you did want to tell us why you keep on falling for Alicia. Why don't you go ahead?
Alicia Keys, I think, is kind of in the same vein as John Legend when we talk about breathing life back into a genre that had sort of taken a back seat to a lot of these more poppy artists. And just looking at her nominations from 2002, she was nominated for 6 awards and won 5 of them. That's insane. There's not many artists on this entire Grammy list that won 5 out of 6 of their awards. I think there were only like 5, if I remember correctly. But everyone wanted to be Alicia once Fallen came out. Everyone tried to do that vocal run. Everyone wanted to learn how to play piano. I just really think that she set off a movement that allowed people like Adele to come up on board, and some other singer-songwriters. And I do really love Alicia Keys, just like genuinely and unabashedly. I think she's a wonderful songwriter, and she seems like a very lovely person.
Agreed. And I also think she's very likely to be an EGOT. She's already got Tony. She's already got Grammy. Does she have Oscar? I don't know.
Not yet, but I was going to say shout out to her, to Hell's Kitchen, the musical that's kind of loosely based on her life. It is incredible.
I would not be at all surprised if by age 40, she is an EGOT. She is one of the ones that, kind of like I was saying earlier with some of the other people, instantly, as soon as they arrived, a star in the firmament, right? They were just like, oh, how did we have music without Alicia Keys? But that being said, same thing is true for Adele, and she's continuing in round 2. Finally, in round 1, the majority of the panel wants to push forward 2020's winner, 2 seed Billie Eilish, but I'm the bad guy, who is polling for 1974's Best New Artist, Bette Midler, a 3 seed. Andrea, tell us why you could eat that girl Billie for lunch. I will share why Bette remains the wind beneath my wings. I'll go first. To win Best New Artist, Bette beat out Brazilian pianist Umar Deodato, sure, schmaltz goddess Maureen McGovern, okay, future Nutrisystem spokesperson Marie Osmond, yep, and 70s soul icon Barry White. I could absolutely have seen it going to White, but I'm glad it was Bette, who has been a consistent pop culture force for 5 decades now, albeit more for films and stage than music. Bette's musical career is unconventional. She had significant hits with throwbacks to the 40s, like Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, or with more swingin' 70s fare, like Friends. And then arguably her biggest hits in the 90s, with her power ballads Wind Beneath My Wings and From a Distance. It is a very strange catalog, and yet it works. If you've never heard her version of The Rose from that musical of the same name, please listen to it. It is a peerless vocal. All that said, fully agree that Billie Eilish should advance here. I just wanted to speak on Bette. We almost never talk about her on this podcast, and that's a shame. She's a fascinating celebrity. This is a woman who started out literally singing in gay bathhouses and who has become one of the most awarded performers of her generation. Fun fact, the only award Bette is missing for an EGOT is, shockingly, the Oscar. And Eilish, at 22, has already won not 1 Oscar, but 2. Big oof, Bette. But we still love you. That being said, Kevin, are you sticking with Billie?
Sure am, Billie.
All right. Gary, you sticking with Billie?
I am sticking with Billie.
And Andrea?
Sticking with Miss Billie Eilish.
All right, so that's the end of round 1. We're going to take a quick break to make more totally out-of-touch decisions. Macklemore definitely put out a better rap album than Kendrick Lamar, you guys. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey there. If you're enjoying this episode of The Great Pop Culture Debate, and I sure hope you are, we would love for you to consider supporting the show on Patreon. Patreon sponsorships start at $5 a month and include loads of great perks, including access to our super active Discord server, exclusive episodes, and warm-ups you won't hear anywhere else. And at the $10 level or higher, your own GPCD tote bag, which is only fitting, as this is basically our version of an NPR pledge drive. We can only produce this show with your support, so please consider heading to patreon.com/greatpopculturedebate and joining us today.
And we are back for round 2 of our Best Grammy Winner for Best New Artist debate. Before we get into the Elite 8, I want our panelists to share their social media, what else they're working on. I'm going to give it to Kevin. Kevin, talk to us about what your socials are, what you're working on.
You can find me on Twitter at ETKevinsMind. Not really working on much at the moment. I guess life, surviving, living in this economy.
Gary, can you tell us what your socials are, what else you're working on?
You can find me on IG at Gary Music Man J. What am I working on these days? I think just living my life like it's golden. Taking a break from a lot of things, which in a good way. I'm like slowing down a little bit.
Andrea, your socials, what you're working on?
So I'm on Instagram at Dre Souffle. I have an Etsy shop under the same name, and that's all I do with my life other than sit in my house that I bought. Because if you buy a house, that's what you're going to do. You're just going to fucking sit in it.
So you can find me at Eric Rezsnyak on Instagram, or just message at Great Pop Culture Debate on Insta or TikTok, or at GPCD on Mastodon. But what you really must do right now is sign up for our weekly newsletter, new every Monday at noon. It tells you about everything new in pop culture that week. Sign up by finding the link on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or via our link tree on any of our social media accounts. And it is time for our Patreon shout out of the episode, this time for Laura Connors, who has been a supporter since May 2022. Thank you, Laura. If you'd like a shout out in a future episode, become a Patreon supporter today. Now let's move into round 2, where we will annoy everyone by announcing our new album while accepting the trophy for the Album of the Year. First up, it's another unanimous victory for 1 seed The Beatles, the 1965 winners, over 3 seed Carpenters from 1971, but we have only just begun to discuss the Carpenters, and I would at least like to sing their praises. So, the Carpenters, or just Carpenters as some pedantic fans will argue, won the Best New Artist Grammy over The Partridge Family, lol, Melba Moore, that bitch Anne Murray, and a guy who went on to have an okay career named Elton John. You cannot discuss the Carpenters without focusing on Karen Carpenter, one of the most distinctive voices not only of the 60s and 70s, but I would argue in all of pop music. Her brother Richard is very gifted musically, especially when it comes to the group's arrangements, but would the band have taken off without the unique qualities of Karen's voice? I'm going to say no. The band had a string of hits in the 70s, including Superstar, Close to You, We've Only Just Begun, and 2 absolute essential Christmas albums. It is actually credited as the 3rd most popular global music act in Japan after, get ready for it, the Beatles and Mariah Carey. So it's fitting that they're in this company. It's interesting to note that most of the Carpenters' big hits were cover songs, which I did not realize until doing my research for this. The band's legacy was cut short by the tragic death of Karen Carpenter in 1983 due to complications from anorexia. She was only 33. Karen's story was recently discussed in the documentary Karen Carpenter, Starving for Perfection. You can find it on streaming, and I recommend the watch. That being said, we are going to move the Beatles into round 3. Next, the panelists split between people who want to have fun, with 1 seed Cyndi Lauper, the 1985 Best New Artist, but Andrea wants to put on her fuck me pumps and stroll for more votes for 2008 winner Amy Winehouse, a 2 seed. Andrea, throw it back in honor of Amy. I will tell you why money might change everything, but my love for Cyndi remains the same. Andrea, please go first.
Amy Winehouse is a polarizing figure. I think today, now that she has passed, sadly, she has been looked back upon as the huge sensation that she should have been credited with at the time. So she won in 2008. She's also a very unlikely pop star, like some other people that we've talked about on this bracket. But I want to point out some of the people that she beat. So this is a 5 nomination category with Amy, Feist, Ledisi. I don't know who that is. Paramore, and Taylor Swift.
Okay.
This bitch beat out Taylor Swift. Like, that is insane.
Good job, Amy. Yes, yes.
Olivia Rodrigo is over there in the corner just eating her
Allegedly.
in the uterus. Olivia Rodrigo's like, good for her.
So that's the end of my art. No. So when she won that category, she had just checked into rehab for, I don't know if it was the first time or not, but so she wasn't even at the Grammys because she was in rehab. And she is another one that won 5 out of her 6 nominations. Again, a very small category of artists to be able to do that. She won Best New Artist, Record of the Year, Song of the Year for Rehab, Female Pop Performance, and Pop Vocal Album. Those are huge, huge, huge categories. I mean, I would argue that those are some of the most important categories of the Grammys. She is still well known and loved and recognized today. She kind of gave the resurgence of like the Frank Sinatra style of crooning and singing, brought it back into the 2000s in a really lovely way. Her voice was just so unique and so special. I think she was just a really special person in general that didn't have enough time on this planet. She has several movies about her. She has one in the works. Her dad's writing a musical, a West End musical about her. I could keep going for a very long time about Amy Winehouse, but Curtis is mad at me, so we'll move on.
I will co-sign right off the bat that nobody had a voice like Amy Winehouse, much like we were saying with Karen Carpenter. And that is no more obvious than in her recent biopic by Sam Taylor Johnson, in which I don't know who that gal is who played her, but every time she was on the screen singing, I was just like, my God, why didn't you just lip sync? Because it's not bad. Like, she's not a bad singer, but it doesn't sound like Amy Winehouse. And I'm saying, I mean, like, when you've got filet mignon on the menu, you don't go and get a cheeseburger from McDonald's. And that's what you're giving me sonically here. And it completely took me out of the movie. That being said, I'm here to talk about Cyndi Lauper. We talked about Cyndi in the first round quite a bit, but I want to make sure that people understand that it wasn't just girls who want to have fun. Girls who want to have fun. Girls just want to have fun. She had True Colors. She had Time After Time. She went on to dip into blues music. She has become a quite prolific singer-songwriter and Broadway composer. Not only was she the person behind Kinky Boots, she's working on another upcoming show that is, I can't remember what it is off the top of my bat, but it's a big property. And she continues to be very relevant in pop culture 40 plus years after she won this. Like, Cyndi's never really far from being the conversation. She's also been a tremendous force for LGBTQ people, specifically LGBTQ youth, through her True Colors Foundation. Her music career may not have the same level of legacy as even Amy Winehouse. You know, Amy was only here for a brief time, but she left a very big mark from those couple of albums. Cyndi's, I would say, you can put all of her great hits onto one disc very succinctly and you'd be fine. But I wanted to talk about her at least. I'm going to put it to a vote. Gary, are you with Amy or are you with you, Cyndi, here?
Oh, this is a hard one for me. Just because I love Cyndi because of Kinky Boots and just Eric, what you just said about just like her legacy and just like the behind the scenes stuff, especially with like the LGBTQ community, is so impactful and that you can't really measure. But just the rawness of and the vulnerability of Amy and what she was able to do in her short time here in a creative space. I'm going to go stick with Amy and just thank you to Amy for allowing us to just have a glimpse of a tragic life, but was lived in just her vocals. I agree with you. You can't replace her vocals and we should never try to do that ever again. So with that, sticking with Amy.
Kevin, where are you on this one?
I'll see your true colors. I'm going to sing terribly throughout this whole episode. I'm with Cyndi Lauper.
Well, I'm actually going to switch my vote to Amy here. I even just in this conversation, when we were talking about them, I felt we had more to talk about with Amy Winehouse, who brought back an entire genre of music. And sorry, that is kind of a big deal.
Her legacy is huge. Like, it is huge. I mean, there's no, I think, wrong answer between these two, ultimately.
So that means it's 3 for Amy, and she'll advance into the final 4. I also do want to point out, I believe Cyndi Lauper is an EGOT. Is she not, Kevin?
She doesn't have an Oscar.
She doesn't have the Oscar. Okay. Well, she'll get there. Why would she not win for Vibes? Just going to put that out there. Next. I think it's another unanimous victory for 1 seed Mariah Carey, the 1991 Best New Artist, who is leaving 2 seed John Legend, the 2006 winner, feeling like ordinary people. And rumor has it that it's another unanimous victory for 1 seed Adele, the 2009 winner, which means the 2020 winner Billie Eilish, a 2 seed, was made for being a lovely fifth alternate. But Kevin, you wanted to speak on Billie.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was almost going to switch my vote to her because, so if you look at her category, I think it's maybe the last, like, really across the board great Best New Artist year. She beat out the Black Pumas, Maggie Rogers, Lil Nas X, Lizzo, Rosalia, Tank and the Bangas, and Yola, who are all very, very well known in the industry. And with that said, that just shows you the preeminence and iconic nature of Billie Eilish. Eric, your reference to her throughout in this episode of her song Bad Guy has consistently been a pop culture mainstay, huge hit on the Billboard charts, but again, prevalent in so many trailers when it came out. You couldn't turn on a movie trailer without hearing that song. And that has pushed her into film and television, where she has acted and written songs for films. She was great in the TV show Swarm, and just 2 Oscars. And she's, I think, the youngest person to have 2 Oscars, which is wild. And I actually predict she is eventually at least nominated for an acting Oscar. Like, that's where this kid is going. Like, and I say kid because she's a lot younger than me still and has a lot more success than me, which is terrifying. But she's amazing. She is a true artist and has won a major top 4 category with, like, everything that she's done.
I agree with all that. I will also point out she's not just an amazing artist, as a business person in this industry.
Incredible.
She's so impressive. Like, if you have not checked out some of what she's doing, it's not just the people around her. Like, this is someone, especially when it comes to her environmentalism stances. Like, I have tremendous respect for Billie Eilish. She's up against Adele. And
can I just add just real quick to that? Just a shout out to her and her depth of writing, Billie's ability to write at
yes.
She's a young adult, but so she has lived experience, but just where she can go, some people's faves who are, in Europe touring can never, to me, in my opinion, allegedly. But I think that is what makes Billie so freaking special to just art.
Agreed. And Andrea, I want to give an option to, I mean, you're literally the only woman on this panel. So do you want to say something about Billie?
I love her. I think I've talked about her on this podcast several times. I think she was in one of my wrap-ups for the best albums of one of the years. And I think, like everyone else has stated, I think she just still has so much more to offer the industry. And I can't wait to see where she goes.
Agreed with that. One quick other little caveat, and then we're going to move on, is that so many of these artists weirdly have done Bond songs. So many of them. If you look at this top 16, it's a crazy prevalence. Like, half of them have done Bond theme songs.
Because McCartney is in there with the Beatles, technically, too. Like, there's
There's so many. It's very weird. That being said, we have our final 4. We're going to take a quick break to give Christopher Cross literally every fucking single major trophy. Oops. We'll be right back after these messages.
Another email newsletter? God, I know. But listen, the Great Pop Culture Debate newsletter, it's actually useful. Give us 3 minutes of your lunch break and we'll tell you all the coolest new stuff in pop culture that week. The biggest new movies in theaters, the hottest new albums about to drop, the TV shows everyone will be talking about. We bring it to you every ball. It's all thriller and no filler, and you'll also find out all the fun news from the podcast. Subscribe today at greatpopculturedebate.com/subscribe.
And we are back for the final 4 of our Best Grammy Winner for Best New Artist Debate. At this point in the show, I always take a step back and see if it shook out the way I expected it to, and no, it did not. I think some of them are pretty obvious. 1 seed The Beatles, 100%. 1 seed Mariah Carey, 100%. 1 seed Adele, sure, although we barely talked about her. Amy Winehouse is a 2 seed and she's a wild card, but hopefully that makes things a little bit interesting. Let's start off at the top with 1 seed The Beatles versus 2 seed Amy Winehouse. I'm going to start at the top of the pack. Andrea, where are you on this one?
I would really honestly like to hear people's arguments.
That sounds fine. Kevin,
I'll start with my Beatles argument. They are the best-selling musical act of all time. That's number one. I grew up on the Beatles. My dad played them, listened to them all the time. I much prefer the Paul McCartney part of the Beatles. The Beatles are a band primarily led by John Lennon and Paul McCartney and their musical writing. You can see that in the music that is created from this band that also had George Harrison and Ringo Starr, but you could tell in the style of the song who wrote the music and what that vibe and lane was. They're formative in a way that isn't necessarily my vibe, per se. Like, I respect what they ended up creating. And again, I prefer more of the Paul McCartney stuff. But again, as the largest selling act of all time, they're phenomenal talent. And also what they did with the Ed Sullivan Show and the girls going crazy on TV. And then in turn, every single one of these 4 artists had a prosperous career that allowed them to be well recognized in the industry as solo artists. You can't say that about, I don't think, any other band. Like, there's so many great iconic songs that they've created, and their catalog is just, I could list hundreds of songs. Like, yeah. It's wild.
Okay, great. So you're with Amy Winehouse then.
I'm with the Beatles.
Great. Gary, Amy Winehouse or the Beatles?
I think I'm going to go with Amy just because, Erica, you made a point of we could continue to talk more and more about Amy, the what is. Amy, the vocal ability, the way that she was able to weave into different genres of music, the what if of what would that have looked like if she was still here? How much more influence would she have had on new artists today? Yes, the Beatles are and have and continue to do so. But I'm going to go with Amy. I think that her vulnerability again and her rawness to showcase that to the world and the way that she was able to do. I'm going to go with Amy.
When Kevin was talking, I was looking up the years active for both of these artists because I was like, I wonder how that compares. Believe it or not, Amy Winehouse had more active years as a recording artist than the Beatles did. The Beatles only released albums between 1960 and 1970. Amy did it from 2000 to 2011. That's it. And so I think it's fascinating when you're talking about, and mind you, hugely different recording industries at those times. The Beatles had to put out music constantly. That's the way you did it back then. There were multiple albums a year. I wanted to put out that metric. Andrea, where are you on this one?
This is tough because, like Kevin, I also grew up on the Beatles. A lot of the music from the 60s and 70s, that was like what was playing in the house all the time. The Beatles, for me, are just so in a league of their own. They don't even feel like they should be in this bracket. And I feel like it's almost similar to like best boy band episode, right? Like, they are technically a boy band, but do they really like fit into that category? And maybe it's just because we're so far removed from 1965, but it just doesn't feel like they fit in with the sort of criteria that we've been talking about. Yes, they have a legacy. Yes, they have longevity. Are we seeing that fade a little bit though with this current generation, with Gen Z?
No, that huge Disney Plus documentary that was widely watched.
That was like 12 hours long. Name a Gen Z kid that's going to spend 12 hours watching them.
But I don't know that we have a footprint on that. I don't think that that's a fair assessment. We're operating in both of these arguments in what if culture, and I think I want to ground us more in like what their actual careers were.
Which is actually helpful because both of these artists have finite careers, right? Like there's no more music being made by either of them, and they're not going to add to their legacy. Where are you coming down?
I don't know.
If it helps you, I'm 100% on the Beatles here. They are the 1 seed and Amy's the 2 seed. And I'll add this. I hear what you were saying about like when we redid the best boy band episode, we knocked the Beatles out early because the argument was the Beatles aren't a boy band. Yes, they're a band made of boys, but they're so much more than that. They are the fucking Beatles. But when the Beatles came out in 1965, people looked at the Beatles the way that people look at Billie Eilish when she came out, as these young kids that were like, what is this? This isn't real music. I can't get into this. And they spoke to a generation the way that multiple other people on this list spoke to their generations. And we'd never had that before, like ever. Popular culture didn't exist like this in the 50s and 40s. They were the beginning of it. So for that reason, I'm sticking with the Beatles. Are you just for posterity reasons, Andrea? Are you going with Amy or?
I am gonna go with Amy. I sent a little blurb to the chat about all of these artists that have gone on record as citing Amy as an influence. And yeah, these same artists can cite the Beatles as an influence, but literally fucking everyone can cite the Beatles as an influence because that's who they are. They're so ubiquitous that way. But I think Amy has a more influence on modern day music as it is today.
Sure. And I don't take that away at all. It is still a 1 seed and a 2 seed, and the Beatles would advance to the final 2. Oftentimes on this here show, in the final 4, we get to a debate that is very really the final 2 of the episode. It just doesn't work out that way because of seeds. And I would argue that this next one is the correct final 2 of the episode, which is 1 seed Mariah Carey versus 1 seed Adele. And this is where it's going to get ugly. I would like to start at the back of the pack with, actually, no, you did it first last time, Kevin.
So no, I'm happy to go. This is an easy answer for me. Adele wouldn't even Adele barely is in my final 4, if I'm being transparent. I think Adele is fine. I think she has a beautiful voice. It's Mariah Carey for me. Easy. And if I have to throw in some arguments, I'm happy to, but for me, it's Mariah.
All right, Gary, Adele or Mariah Carey?
So Adele 19 is the album that catapulted her into our ears. I think what I love about Adele is obviously her powerful vocals. It's the soulfulness and the depth drawing comparison to classic soul singers. At her age, she was 19, so the album 19. Her writing this and just how mature her voice was when she came out, I think that it was incredible. The songs on 19 were deeply personal and they reflected Adele's own experiences and emotions. I felt like this album was authentic. It resonated with a lot of audience members, and we all could relate to like love, heartbreak, and self-discovery. Who Adele is now was not Adele back then. 19 achieved significant commercial success, reaching high chart position in multiple countries. The success was driven by the popularity of singles like Chasing Pavement, Hometown Glory. Adele's music on 19 appealed to a broader audience across different demographics and musical tastes. The blend of pop, soul, and jazz elements attracted listeners again. She got the girls really like vibing with her music. That year, she was up against the Jonas Brothers, Janelle Monáe, and Lady Antebellum. And I think the fact that all 3 of those acts are vastly different from each other, and Adele is smack dab in the middle. Like I just feel like the energy, she just pulled them all into her. Like I feel like she can cross over in a little bit into all of them. So for that, I'm going with Adele.
Okay. Really good arguments. Andrea, where are you on this one?
Adele.
Do you want to talk about Adele or just?
I'll just quick read this blurb from her Wikipedia page. Adele's second album, 21, earned her a record-tying 6 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, 2 Brit Awards, including British Album of the Year. Adele was the second artist and first female, preceded by Christopher Cross, to have won all 4 of the General Field Awards through her career. The success of the album saw her receive numerous mentions in the Guinness Book of World Records. With 21 non-consecutive weeks at number 1 in the US, Adele broke the record for longest number 1 album by female in Billboard industry, beating the record formerly held by Whitney Houston's soundtrack, The Bodyguard. 21 spent its 23rd week at number 1 in March 2012, making it the longest running album at number 1 since 1985, and became the 4th best-selling album of the past 10 years in the US. Those are insane achievements, just absolutely insane. And one of the criteria for Best New Artist is becoming part of the public consciousness, basically, no matter how long you've been around. You know, we've talked about some of these artists that have had like years under their belt and then finally winning the award. She came out and she was a part of the public conscious. That was it. There was no stopping her from the minute that she started releasing records, started writing her own stuff, and people started to recognize her for the powerhouse that she is.
Here's the thing. I know, Kevin, you said this was no contest for you. I actually think these two are, if there's anyone who could match Mariah on this, it's Adele. They're actually really similar in a lot of ways. The same way that Mariah was everywhere as soon as she came out. The same is true for Adele.
Sure.
I looked into what was the highest selling record album for Mariah and how many copies was the highest selling record album for Adele. And they're very close in terms of record sales. That's remarkable when you think of the vast disparity of record sales in
That's
the
true.
2000s versus the 1990s. I mean, they're a fraction of what they used to be.
My one thing, though, is Adele, I'm going to say this, Adele is giving you almost the same vibe on every album, and Mariah Carey has literally created types of music and genres. I'm not saying Adele is the same in every album. I'm just saying the vibe is similar. It is a similar lane, and I get it. What she does is excellent. Like, I'm not questioning that by any means. I'm just saying we need to talk about like a person who's transcended genre and created multiple hits across multiple genres, made an impact not only writing music for film and television, but starring in film and television, producing film and television, that advanced the music community in partnership with people like Lee Daniels. Like, she is and has taken that. And when you talk about longevity on, like, again, Queen of Christmas, she is the person who's had the longest charting streak for any artist. Like, I get it. Adele will and can get there, but like for me right now, it's still Mariah.
I hear everything you just said, and I agree with all of it. Here's where I think it's very interesting. Mariah is an artist that plays with genre. Adele is an artist who's telling one personal story through her albums. It's not a coincidence that her albums are named, but the year in her life, and they are chronicling a human being, a musician, as they are going through their life's journey. I can't think of another situation where that's been that textual, but all right, so Kevin, you're on Mariah.
Yep.
Gary, you're on Adele.
I agree with Eric on the genre is the same, but it is really giving growth and like new context of relationships and where she's at. So I'm going to stick with Adele.
Andrea, you're with Adele.
I am with Adele.
I'm going to go with Adele here, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Here comes my my moment because I don't care about either of the final two at all.
Okay, great.
Thank you both. Thank you all for this. I think this is a mistake. But I also think this is the let's not put respect to Mariah Carey's name and let's elevate a white woman who just sings well. But that's my take. And that's my angered argument, and that's my storming off. And you're going to get a big who cares in the final two from me. Just saying.
Please don't storm off. All right, so we have a final two of one seed the Beatles versus one seed Adele. I'm going to start with Kevin. You have a vested interest in this matchup, so
I'm going with the Beatles. I don't think of these two that the two are in any form of comparison for me. But the Beatles would be my answer.
Gary, where are you on this one?
I think it's a Brit all-out war. I'm going with Adele.
Andrea, where are you on this one?
I'm going with Adele.
I think I would give it to the Beatles, personally. We really haven't even, frankly, begun to do justice to their catalog. I don't see this going any way well if we continue to go down to this. And we haven't had a tie in a while, so you know what? Fuck it.
No. I'll go to Adele. I'll vote for Adele. We can make it a clean sweep. I'm not going to be petty. I don't want to be peppermint petty. You know me. If you guys think it is Adele, sway me. Like, why? I know you've talked a lot about her, but why Adele versus the Beatles? Like, what genuinely makes her stand out to you all versus the top selling artists of all time who have transcended genre, like every genre? Tell me more.
That's fair. Andrea, can you give me a compelling argument why Adele should win it over an artist like the Beatles that has transcended genres multiple times?
I just think today in 2024, I do think she has more cultural relevancy. I think she is such a record-breaking woman and a very successful and talented woman. And not to say that the Beatles haven't broken records. Obviously, they've set those records. They are the makers of those records. For me, it really is going back to what I was saying before, where it doesn't even feel like the Beatles should be in this bracket, not because they don't deserve to be. They obviously deserve to be. I just think that they are transcendent and that they are in like a true league of their own, that it's almost like, the pepperoni argument. It's almost unfair to pitch them up against everyone else because they are the blueprint. They're what everyone else has based themselves off of. And is that a bad argument? I don't know. But that's just how I feel.
Could you say the same thing for Mariah, that she's also in her own league and she also supersedes this?
That's actually a fair point. That's a fair point. I will say I don't think that that's necessarily a good argument, but with that said, you all are really passionate about Adele, and I don't know that any of us are super passionate about the Beatles.
That's a great point.
But what I will just say is, like, you all are super passionate about Adele, and what your passion brings to this is that's why I'm going to switch. And I think ultimately for that reason, you're convincing me that the passion for her as an artist is there. It's not there with me, but I hear you all. I also am probably still salty from her beating Beyonce for that terrible 25 album. But again, that's me, and I'm going to swap to Adele.
Well, you actually just took the words out of my mouth, Kevin, because I was going to say, there you have it. Our pick for the best Grammy winner for Best New Artist is Adele. But Adele herself would say, quote, "I can't possibly accept this award. I'm very humbled and grateful and gracious. My life is Beyonce. The Lemonade album, Beyonce, was so monumental and so well thought out and so beautiful and soul-bearing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." But no, seriously, we are going to go ahead and give it to Adele. Do you agree? Do you think that we sound like a broken record? Tell us how you really feel by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or Mastodon. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you can hear about what new debates are coming soon, vote in open polls, and even decide which topics we tackle next. If you really enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like and rate it on whatever platform you listen on. I want to say thank you to my panel. You did a great job of helping me cram all that gram, and thank you for listening. If you loved what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you get even more exclusive content and get episodes a whole day early. We hope you have a good one, and remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion. Wu-Tang is still for the children.